Everybody, it's your girl Deshonda Carter, but you can call me DC. Thanks so much for tuning in today to my show, When the Blue Comes Off. Sit back, relax, take notes, do what you like, and let's get into it. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my very special guest, Colette Cunningham. Woo! Oh, welcome. Thank you so much for being on the show, Colette. I am so excited to have you. Guys, you don't even understand. This is going to be a juicy show. And you know what? All of my shows are juicy, but this is going to be juicy too. So you want to stick around and listen to this. So welcome, Colette. Yes, I have my own sound effects.
Love it. Thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you for being here. So Colette, let's just jump into it. So you are a retired first lieutenant from which department?
So I am I was with Loudoun County Sheriff's Office. Yep, and I retired last year as a first lieutenant.
So Loudoun County Sheriff's Office. That's in what city? That's what's
So we are in Virginia, outside of D.C., about 30 to 40 minutes outside of Washington, D.C.
Wow, so you're right there in the cusp of everything. Okay.
Yep.
So did you grow up out there? Is that where you're originally from?
Yeah, I am from the Northern Virginia area. I went to high school in Northern Virginia, and then I ended up going to North Carolina State for college on a soccer scholarship. Kind of before I got into law enforcement, my really all I did was play soccer. So I went to college on a soccer scholarship and ended up getting a bunch of opportunities throughout the course of playing with the national team, the United States national team. I also played overseas in Italy, and as well was the first woman to play on the men's professional soccer team out of Washington, D.C., the Washington Warthogs.
So wait a minute.
So that kind of...
So wait, let's back that up. So you went into high school. So prior to high school, were you playing soccer? Like what introduced you, who and what got you into the soccer to begin with? Let's start there.
Yeah. So I actually am from New York.
Really?
Like that. Had to throw that in. And we were in the Bronx. My dad was an FBI agent, and that's kind of where I grew up.
Wait a minute. Where in the Bronx were you from? I grew up in the Bronx, too. Where did you grow up?
So I lived in Pelham.
Oh, I lived right off of Bedford. I lived off the Bedford Park.
Yes. So we were in Pelham, and my father, we also had relatives, all in the Bronx, Pelham, Poughkeepsie, all over New York, actually. So we started out there, and there wasn't a lot of girls' soccer back then, so I had little boys' teams I played on, and my sister was actually a very good soccer player, and she was 5 years older than me, so I wanted to be like her and started following in her footsteps, and that's kind of how I got into playing soccer. And then we migrated up to Northern Virginia when I was around 12 or 13.
Oh, okay. So now you're playing soccer, 12, 13. You go to high school. You have excelled in this sport because obviously you played for these very elite teams, right? And
Correct.
How did it become that you were the first only female at the time, right, on this team?
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Yep. So when I was playing I was in and out of the national team camps, and I had been playing. I was just locally training for the national team, and the coach of the Washington Warthogs at the time, Jim Gabera, his wife was actually a national team player as well. And when he became the coach, he had asked, I don't know if you've ever heard of Mia Hamm. She's a famous soccer player, but a lot of people, if they're not into soccer, they don't really know her. But anyway, she's a fixation in the soccer world, Mia Hamm. And so they had asked both of us if we were interested in trying out for the team. Mia had other obligations all over the U.S. She's actually one of our youngest national team players. She started playing at 15. So yeah, that's kind of how I spearheaded into the Washington Warthogs from that team, and then ended up being granted a tryout and made the team.
So you were all athletic and stuff growing up and young. Dad was FBI. So in the back of your mind, this law enforcement is there, right? Because Dad is FBI.
Yep.
But what was it
Yep.
for you that made the switch to stop playing? Or I don't even know, did you stop playing totally soccer? Or how did you transition from soccer into law enforcement?
So I was playing overseas in Italy for about 5.5 years. And when I was over there, and this is after the Washington Warthogs. So I had signed a contract to play with Lazio over in, I played for a team in Rome and Naples. And while I was over there, my father, he was diagnosed with cancer and was given about 3 to 6 months to live. So at that point, I had a sister who was actually coaching soccer up at Princeton University. She had just gotten the job, and my brother had just started law school. So I was really the only one in a position to be there for my father full time, because we didn't want to throw him into. They were divorced, my parents, and we didn't want to put him, in a hospice facility or anything like that. So I had 2 years left on my contract in Italy. I broke it and, flew home and basically was able to take care of him until he passed away. So that got me, we had about 3 months together, and we talked a lot about, my life and where I was going. I had actually had a son when I was playing in Italy. So he kind of steered me towards going to local law enforcement, because he didn't want me, uprooting my son every 3 years if I was in the FBI, moving around so much. So although initially I really wanted to be in the FBI, after speaking to him over the months that we had together, I determined it would probably be best to stay local and, be able to raise my son in a stable environment.
So like most women at this time, a lot of women tend to go into law enforcement for stability purposes, great benefits, and security.
That's right.
Right? So I don't think we wake up. I mean, there's very few. I mean, Chanel, who we will talk about later on, someone who has already been on the show, and we will talk about her again. But Chanel is one of the very few women who I think I've interviewed or have even spoken to in my life that said, hey, I knew at a very, very young age I was going to go into law enforcement. So,
yep.
9 times out of 10, we don't find that.
100%. I always knew I was going to follow in my father's footsteps. I always knew I was going to be in law enforcement as well. I just had the soccer thing going on, and I was going to play that out, until my body told me enough is enough. And so that's kind of what I did.
Oh, that's amazing. I mean, listen, do you try to play still now? Do you think you could kick a what is it, field goals in soccer? Is it field goal? No,
Girl. No, not field goal. You
that's
score
hockey.
Goals, but I just don't know if the body'd be able to move like I used to.
Oh.
So, no, now I'm a great spectator, but not so much playing myself.
Oh.
I do other things, but yeah, the soccer playing is done.
Okay, so now you're in law enforcement. You're in your local agency, something that's close to home. What was that like for you? Because at this point, you didn't necessarily. You're like, okay, I'm an athlete. I've been here. I'm famous. Damn it, I've been around the world, and I'm going into this academy, and I'm going to serve the community. What was that like? I mean, initially, was it all that you thought it was going to be, or were you in shock?
So because of the elite, I'll say elite, I mean, just because it was a little bit more than the usual, but the training that I did in soccer at the higher levels kind of prepared me for what the academy was going to be like, right? When you're on more advanced teams, you have coaches that, when you're little and playing, your coaches are like, oh, everybody's great, everybody's going to play, blah, 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 blah. And as you get older, your coaches get a little bit harder, And, when you're not playing, it's because you're not playing well enough. And, there's no escape. There's no victim mentalities or anything. It's like you're either good enough and you're playing or you're not. And if you're not, you've got to get better or you're gone, right? I mean, with the national team, you'd literally go to a camp, and if you didn't pass your fitness test, you were going on the next flight home. So that type of mentality and just overcoming losses and getting, better after being injured and all those things that come with sport, it definitely helped me going into the academy. I think that the hardest part for me was firearms, because at the time I had never shot before. I wasn't a hunter. I didn't live, in the country where your families are hunters, which we do have out here in Loudoun County. So that was a skill that was difficult for me in the academy. But other than that, in terms of, studying and the getting through all the running and everything, I had that down, I think.
Okay, so you took on the academy, you've been on the job. So how much time, since you said you retired last year, how much time did you actually put in before in service?
23 years before
how
retiring
many?
last year. 23 years before retiring last year.
23. I thought you said 43, girl. I was about to say...
No, girls, that would be a problem. Yeah,
okay.
That'd be a lot.
So you did 23 years, and so how does it work in your township? Like, in terms of, you go from officer, do you take a test to get promoted? Like, how many ranks do you go to get to the level the next level, or the level you retired at?
So you can start as a deputy first class, and then you would go to master deputy. And from master deputy, you would go to sergeant. For sergeant, you would go to the second lieutenant, and then from second lieutenant, you'd go to first lieutenant, which is where I was at. Great department. We didn't have a lot of women when I started, and so we didn't have a lot of, I'll say, things for women to, like, we didn't have mentors. We didn't have, somebody kind of guide you through, navigate through all the stuff, right? It's a little bit different with women in a male-dominated field. And when you don't have that mentorship, which I think is important, you're kind of navigating everything by yourself, because of the few women that we had. So I didn't start becoming a supervisor until after 16 years. So I actually did the work. I was in robbery homicide. I did narcotics, did a lot of undercover work. I did special victims unit. And so I was doing the actual work for a long time before I got into supervision.
So since you worked in all of these different areas, out of all of the areas you worked in, what was your favorite and what was your least favorite?
That's a good one. So all of the positions, I really love investigative work, and I think the narcotics unit, hands down, if anybody's been in the narcotics unit, that's kind of like I always say, like the pinnacle of a career. And I think it's because it's typically units where it's an elite group, typically. I mean, maybe it's not like that everywhere, but you have to put in a lot of work to get there. It's not an anybody gets in type of deal. And you have an off-site location for your office, so admin's not around all day, so you can kind of cut up and have a good time. And all while being safe and doing your job, but the camaraderie, I always, it reminded me of the team concept I had playing soccer, and that's what I really liked. A group of 15 guys, and you're just all about that team, and you kind of all move together throughout your day while you're doing deals and everything. So that to me was the best time of my career. And the other great unit I was in was the robbery homicide unit, and I say it was actually the best and the worst, because with that type of work comes a lot of things that people don't normally see. A lot of deaths, you could go from twin babies dying to, suicides and hangings and all kinds of things. That unit is just specifically, robberies and homicides. So yeah, it's awesome when you're helping people and you're the detective that's, there for the families and all that, but it also carries a lot of heavy weight mentally. So while it was also one of the favorites, it was also one of my least favorites, just because of the kind of baggage that you carry after units like that.
So this is a dual part. So the first thing is, because you have a family, you have a child, and you're in these units, how did that affect you at home? Like, was there ever a time where you questioned, should I be doing this, because you have a young child at the time?
100%. Yes. There were times I had twins. They were born premature. They were 2 pounds when they were born. And so as a mother, I think we're a tad more empathetic, not than all males, but I think because of what we experience, our bodies experience, we tend to be a little bit more forgiving and empathetic in life.
Right.
And so there were times we had to attend autopsies a lot too. So you would go from like the body to the autopsy. It was like repetitive thing. Just you're with the body, the family, autopsy, body, family, autopsy. And so, yeah, there were times where I was like, what? I mean, it's hard to process those things, right? And you're not allowed to talk about it, or you weren't. And being a female is also a little bit more difficult, because in a male-dominated field, you don't want to be the woman that's bitching all the time or complaining all the time, right? So a lot of times women, we just suck everything up, right? Because we're in the male-dominated field, and we have to, in our heads, just keep quiet and not say anything. So there were times where I was like, this is pretty heavy for me, and maybe it'll be, maybe it's time to get out. However, the one thing, when my dad was dying, and when he passed away, it was with me in my arms. And so, going through that process, I always felt that I wanted to be the one that was there for these families when they were going through their difficult time, because I knew what I went through. And so I wanted to be there for them. And so in my head, I kept saying, like, you've got to be there for them. You've got to be there for them. This is what, it's part of your job, and it's what right now you're meant to do. And so that's kind of how I would mentally process getting through all that. But, looking back now after being retired, I think I probably should have tapped out a little bit earlier.
Right, because what? In law enforcement, and this is why I say this quite often, a lot of times this is why law enforcement personnel tend to suffer with substance abuse in terms of alcoholism. Because there is no way to totally disconnect from your day. For me, I've never been a drinker. I mean, I drink sociably, but I'm talking about the ones who, after a hard day, have to hit the bar. They have to be, they have to die. Yeah. They just can't, And with that being said, it's even 10 times harder as a woman, because if you go to the bar and become an alcoholic, let's just say you don't go to the bar. Say you go home and you drink alone, but you're downing a whole bottle of wine. But you got to be mom. You got to be the wife. You got to be the daughter. You got to do so many things. You wear so many hats. And people kind of forget that, you see me in the uniform. You see me patrolling. But I take this off, and when I take this off, I still have my own shit I have to go through, right?
That's right. Yeah, yes. And they don't, a lot of people do not understand that at all. Mm-mm. So it's a difficult place for women, and I hope, my hopes are that, we can turn the tide with just our conversations, right? Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of people inside the departments now that hurt so bad. I had one of my best friends, who was actually my husband's SWAT partner. He killed himself in 2019, but he was drinking and he was doing all the things, that that we do to escape. And, you know, a couple calls that he couldn't get out of his head, and, you know, he just spiraled. And it was really hard, you know, watching it and not being able to do much at the time, although, you know, we all feel we could have done more. But at any rate, you know, we have to keep talking about this, because there are people hurting and in the inside of these departments, and they're just not allowing people to talk about it yet fully, I don't think.
Right.
At least here in our area.
Well, I know when I worked for the Department of Corrections, we had a unit called the Care Unit. But one of the things about some of these units is that it's upon you, right, to go voluntarily.
Correct.
It's not a mandate. So the thing is, a lot of times, even with the psychological exams, when after a certain amount of time, you take a psychological exam to get hired, but they never revisit this part of the job. And, you know, people tend to lose some of it. And I don't want to say go crazy, but people tend to, you know, they experience so many different things throughout the span of a 20-year career. Divorce,
100%.
bad calls, depression, substance abuse, children abuse. Like, there's a lot of things. But remember, I gotta appear, like you said, as the woman. You know, we don't want to be the ones bitching all the time. So we have to pretend that everything is okay at home, everything is okay at work. We're okay all the time. And if we go to any of these particular, drop my recording. Sorry. If we go to any of these particular units or services, the potential of me possibly losing access to my firearm or being
100%.
put on modification. So now my job is in jeopardy if I speak freely and openly to kind of release some of these things that's going on with me. Like,
That's right. And I also think, like, we service our weapons. We go to the range every 6 months. We go to driving school. You know, we do all these things for everything else, but why aren't we training our brains too? Like, why aren't we every piece of equipment?
Making sure the mask is tight, or you don the mask properly with a proper seal.
murder in Sterling, Virginia. It was a whodunit type of deal. It was a drug-related type ordeal. But anyways, one of the things about working murder cases is if it's an unknown, right? It's in the middle of nowhere. If there's a lot of people that they hang out with and stuff, it's a lot harder, right, than if you go to a residence and it's a domestic-related homicide or something like that. So one of the cases I had was a guy who had murdered this other guy. Ironically, the guy who was dead, I was actually buying drugs from him when I was in the narcotics unit. And now here I was in the robbery homicide unit working his murder,
wow,
which was kind of ironic. Yes. So the guy, it took me 48 days, I always say, because the show, the first 48,
yes,
48
yes,
hours.
Yes.
Right. Well, I deemed this case the first 48 days because it took me 48 days to finally arrest this guy. And, it was my first murder case as the lead. And I basically, for 48 days, barely slept. I had a cot in my cubicle. It was like 2 hours a night, and then I was just up doing interviews. And the greatest thing was, see, when I was in the narcotics unit, I made a lot of confidential informants, and I always treated them with the utmost of respect. And, I treated them everybody with the utmost of respect, regardless of what they had done. But it benefited me when I was working this homicide, because all these people in the drug world, they were calling me up to tell me, hey, I had these convicted felons, they were dying to call me to tell me it wasn't them. So I'm also a big believer in, treating everybody with respect, because obviously they need to be treated with respect, but, they remember that, so it was beneficial in this case. And I just remember locking this guy up, and I just told him, hey, you made a big mistake by committing this crime in Loudoun County, because we don't have that many murders, and we have a whole lot of resources and money. And he just looked at me and he said, yeah, good luck, or something like that. And he was like, and by the way, you remind me of Celine Dion. And I was like, I didn't want to be, in my head, I was like, okay, you're not so bad, but he is, obviously. But that was kind of it was such a great moment for me, because I had worked so hard. It was my first murder case, and I put him behind bars, and it was probably, for my career, that was the greatest thing. And he got life, and so, yeah, so that was kind of one of my best cases.
Well deserved. Good for his ass, okay? And, some people just are a bad seed, but there are plenty that are not. So I'm glad that you...
100%.
It goes back to empathy, Even though you wear a uniform doesn't mean you treat everyone like, douchebags, because you don't know who really is a douchebag until you do an investigation. You know what I mean? So, that's you have to be a little bit more mindful of that. But if you had to do it all over again and go into this monitoring,
Absolutely. No doubt about it. It is the most adrenaline-filling. You never know what you're going to get. Every day is different. You are, it makes you feel good when you're helping people, if that's your thing, which is fine. I like, to obviously help people. And, yeah, it's motivating every day. I would do it again 100 times over, no doubt about it. It's hard, really hard. Things were hard, but I wouldn't have changed it for the world. Actually, the hardness that I experienced, it's actually propelling me for growth in my future. So I don't regret anything. I'm okay with, the hard times that I had, and I wouldn't change it for the world.
That's amazing. So guys, listen, we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back with this wonderful, phenomenal woman. So don't go anywhere, and we are going to take a break and be back. We'll be back.
This has been brought to you by Simply Carter Corp., your one-stop shop for all of your entertainment and party needs. Contact Simply Carter Corp. for any special occasion. You can find them on Facebook at Simply Carter Corp., on Instagram at Simply Carter Corp. You can check out their website at www.simplycartercorp.com. Give them a call at 845-682-0022, or you can shoot them an email at hello@simplycartercorp.com. Simply Carter Corp, a brand for everyone.
Welcome back, guys. We're here with the amazing Colette Cunningham, and we're going to continue to talk about her career in law enforcement, and then she's going to segue right into what she is doing now that she has taken off her blue. So just to wrap up that last segment, Colette, is there anyone you want to shout out, anything you want to say to the young ladies out there who is thinking about becoming law enforcement, whether it's your town, out of town, across town, young lady, she wants to be in law enforcement, your advice?
One of the things I always tell anyone who's interested in the line of work is to seek out other women who are in the line of work and different ranks. It's always good to talk to somebody on the bottom level if you can find one at the top level. I also tell them as a woman to look at agencies that have, if you pull up their sites, their organization department sites, and you can see who's in their command staff. It's always good to find departments that have multiple women in their command staff. That's where I would start. I wish somebody would have told me that. But I think seeing women up there in those higher positions shows that, one, there's opportunity, and that, you know, there's going to be somebody that's understanding some of the things that women can go through during their career. So I say go for it. Don't hesitate. If there's anything that you're not great at, you know, seek people out that could help you, i.e. firearms, running, you know, anything like that. Skills can be taught, and it's just repetition. And so you really have to have the desire to want to be out there and, you know, find a department that suits you. A lot of people just go to the department that they live in. Like I'm living here and I'm just going to go for the department that I live in. That may not be the department for you. So really do your research. Don't just say, I'm going to go to this department because it's right here next to me. It may be something that's better if you relocate.
Right.
But sometimes people, so I think it's just educating yourself on the departments. Look at the people that are involved. Look at the pictures. Because, you know, you want to be somewhere where you're going to be, your voice will be heard. So that's my advice.
And that's excellent advice. And you know what? Just because you said it made my mind think, you know, it's better also if you relocate, you're less than likely to have to run into arrest the people who you went to high school with, because you're in a whole different, you're in a different town, county, you know, state. So that's a good idea. Yeah. So now you're out of law enforcement. Well, you're out of law enforcement. You're no longer playing hockey. Now you're into becoming a part of a phenomenal book, becoming an author. Tell the people about this special project.
This is amazing. So I connected with Chanel, who is an amazing woman. Chanel Dickerson is, I reached out to her on my own. I found her and just thought she was so inspiring. And we met up quite a few times. She had told me about a vision she was, you know, planning to do an anthology on women in law enforcement. Right away, I was all over her about this because, you know, I had so much about my story that I wanted to share. And, you know, we had talked about the 30 for 30 initiative that's going around the country right now, which is trying to get 30% women by 2030 into departments. And so, you know, Chanel and I both had hardships in our career, but like it didn't deter us at all from wanting to be in our careers, right?
Right.
That shows you how powerful and how amazing the profession is, right? You have women who have endured things, and yet they're still saying that that's where they would be. So just imagine how great it would be if, you know, there were more women in law enforcement and more women in those command positions and leadership positions. Like, we'll crush shit once we get more women in there. So I wanted to be a part of Chanel's vision. Our anthology is called Uncuffed Voices. Chanel spearheaded this all. She's got a bunch of women, amazing women involved in this anthology. Everybody has a story, and I think that it's going to be awesome for anybody looking to get into law enforcement to hear all about our grit, perseverance, determination to be the best cops we could be. So that's what we're doing now, gearing up for it.
So if I'm not mistaken, I think it's you don't know what chapter you are yet. She didn't break it down by chapters yet, right? Like, are you chapter like 3, 4? Like, did you know?
Oh, yeah. No, I don't know. I don't know. It'll just be each chapter. It'll have our name with a picture. And then, the chapter will be along with it.
So have you ever written before?
No. And this is crazy because... But I had thought about it before, but it's overwhelming, right? I was not an academic person. I would say I was the athlete student, not the student athlete. I had hard times in school. I was not the brightest one in the bunch. I was hardworking, but academics were always pretty hard for me. So, but I loved to write, and so she kind of guided me and inspired me to try. And just said, just write, because maybe it'll be therapeutic for you as well. And it was, and I think I wrote that chapter in one night. And because I started and I couldn't stop.
Right.
And so it's it's been amazing. I've actually kept writing because I liked it so much. So I'm thinking about possibly writing my own book in the future. But I loved it. It was, with Chanel by my side, it made it all possible to even get my brain wrapped around the fact that I was writing anything for a book.
Right.
So I think it's going to be amazing. There's amazing women in the book. When you see it, you're just going to be like, how the hell did she get this many amazing women in one book? But she did it. She's amazing. And all the women that are a part of it are amazing as well.
So that's a good thing, right? That not only are you trying your hand at the first time of being an author of your specific chapter, but it has opened up a window for you to say, hey, like, this is really therapeutic. This is really something that I can do. And you have a lot to tell. So yes, it's very easy for you to sit and write your own story. For myself, I pat myself on the back too. I did pen 2 books myself. And one of the ones that I'm really most and more profoundly closest to my heart is the reason why women should start a business, right? And if you think about it, why should women start a business? You know why? Because we're business owners anyway. We run the house. We're the boss of the home.
You're
like
right.
if you don't run the house, then you don't need you know what I mean? So I
100%. Yeah.
I think that this book is going to be amazing. There are many different things that are going to come out of this book. I believe it. I know it. I'm working with Chanel on some other things as well. And I cannot wait to read the whole thing. Like, each chapter is going to have... Each chapter, it's not like a book where you're reading a set story, so it doesn't have a storyline. That's the good thing. You're going to go from each individual, and you're going to be in that person's story at that moment, the next person's story at that moment. And they're all going to be so different and amazing that you can read it over and over again. You there?
Oh my goodness. Okay, yes, I'm here. Break. I'm from Loudoun County, Virginia. All right.
It's okay. Listen, it's all right. We all experience technical difficulties. I'm not the most technical person at all, so it's no problem. So any last shout out you want to give or anything else you want to say in regards to your department, anything so we can wrap it up and just let them know. I think the date for the book is coming out like in June or something like that. I'm hoping the tentative date is June, if I'm not mistaken. Any more information you want to give about that? Also, your social media handles so that, the people can start to follow you so that when the book is out, they know where to reach you and things of that nature.
Yeah, I am totally honored and blessed to be a part of this anthology with Chanel. I'll never be able to thank her enough just for supporting me. And I always talk about how my department didn't have a lot of mentors during my career, 20-year career and 23-year career. But in my later years, I developed a couple of mentors, and it's later in my careers. One of them is Linda Toney. She's part of the anthology as well. She was a lieutenant colonel out of Loudoun County, Virginia, and also a captain from Fairfax County, Camille Stewart, who was also part of the anthology. And I had met them at a leadership school a few years before retirement, and man, did they mentor me and just give me so much great advice, solid humans. And I'm just very thankful for those three, particularly, being at the tail end of my career and after. So thank you to Linda, Camille, and Chanel. And I can be found on Instagram at _ride_die, ride or die. And on Facebook, Colette Cunningham on Facebook. And you can email me at ceceat@gmail.com.
Well, I want to thank
so much
you
for having me.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm excited.
You're amazing.
I am so excited to
Yeah.
have you. Thank you so much for even just you being a part of the When the Blue Comes Off family. I look forward to supporting the book. I also will be hopefully interviewing a few more of the ladies from the book because I'm very excited about it. So thank you again for being here, guys. Make sure you follow, make sure you support, and we will be on the lookout for the Uncuffed Voices that I am praying will be out by June. And if it's not out by June, whenever it comes out, we here at When the Blue Comes Off will be supporting. So guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for being here. And it's a wrap. Talk to you soon. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. And I look forward to bringing you many more, all with positive vibes. Remember, whatever you do, do it from the heart with love and passion. Stay safe. Talk to you soon.